Hey guys, Jared here, co-founder of 21st Century Warrior, with a very important video, just in relation to what it is we do and how it can help you. Um, just who this is for, what this whole 21st Century Warrior thing is about. So if you've seen or heard or have any sort of interest, you've seen us on Instagram, Facebook, wherever it might be, or just heard from a friend, and you wanted to know a bit more about what we do, we get asked that question a lot. Well, I wanted to spend some time really giving you a full answer to that question here. So if you're one of those guys who's suffered from stress or anxiety or depression, or you're feeling a bit unfulfilled in the way in the type of work you do, or you're just not where you'd like to be internally. I'm not talking externally, I'm talking internally, how you feel, how you think, how's your mindset, how's your heart, all those sorts of things. Well, this video is really for you and about the challenges that we face as men and how to overcome them. So I promise you right now that if you stick with me for the remainder of this video, you will absolutely learn some more about you and about your internal self. And this is an area where we get very little opportunity to learn or grow because we just don't know where to find the information. So stay with me. I'll take you on a bit of a journey here and help you to understand what it is we do, but really more about what it is the challenge that faces most men these days, and how to start to overcome that. It's a real, almost like a lost message that we need to gather and connect back to. So about 6 years ago, I had one of the guys who I was in direct control or direct responsibility for. I was running a construction business at the minute with plumbers and leccos and those sorts of guys, being a lecco myself. I had one of our guys commit suicide. Went home, literally like sorted out all of his activities, brought his van back to work, hung up his tools, put his keys back in the rack, did the whole lot, and just went home and didn't come back to work the next day. And for me, that was one of those experiences in life that was just life-altering. Now, here's what happened. We obviously there's an enormous amount of shock and pain and suffering, especially for the people close to him in terms of family around that person. But I guess what happened? Well, what happened is a funeral was organised for a couple of days later. We attended, and that funeral was enormously painful, just for me. And I only had a relatively, only knew this guy relatively not that well, to be honest. I could just see this enormous amount of pain associated with this particular incident. We went to the funeral, and basically a few days later, that situation had slid on by and life went on. And for me, I couldn't let go of that. I felt it was just such a tragedy. And I think that one of the reasons why I felt it was such a tragedy is because I knew some of those elements were within me. Some of those times when you feel down, and it manifests itself in different ways in guys. Sometimes we're feeling really anxious about the future. Sometimes we're getting really low. Sometimes we're just looking for something and can't find it, can't find the answer to what we need to do next in our lives. It's not all doom and gloom. Most guys are getting on with their life, but there's just these periods that, And so this particular instance had a profound and deep impact on me. And what it made me realize is that there's actually some issues out there with men. I feel like me personally, and the reason why we created 21st Century Warrior as a program is that it's almost like an epidemic, I think, out there with men, and that there's so many men out there that are actually experiencing a level of discontent on the range from extreme pain to just a little bit, but a level of discontent for which there is no solution for. And I'm working in male-dominated trades and all that for the last 25 plus years. I've seen this problem time after time after time after time. And I've seen women go on this amazing sort of journey of enlightenment, and they're becoming, that was badly needed. Don't get me wrong. That's really important. I can see men actually kind of getting lost, and the role of what it means to be a man being very blurred these days. So, so we've created this 21st Century Warrior, but I want to get deep into what it actually is and what it actually does, because if this is something that may be of interest to you, I want to give you an experience and an understanding of what this is all about. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump us across, and I'm going to draw some stuff because I think it'll really help you really fill your mind with what it is what we're talking about here. Okay, so just give me a sec while I do this. So just to ask you whilst that shifts across, have you experienced, hopefully you can see all of that, have you experienced any of that challenge, any of that pain? Can you relate to what it is I'm talking about there? Maybe a sense of unfulfillment about your job, maybe just anxiety and stress coming in a fair bit, maybe just not really, having a good group of mates. Like we've got a good group of mates, but not really getting into anything more deeper than the surface with them. Well, here's why, right? And so let's drop in and have a real good look at what's actually going on with men. There are 3 actual problems. The first problem is a problem called, we're just going to call that trauma. And what that is, trauma is we carry around with us energetically experiences that have come with us for many, many years. We have those experiences and the emotion gets trapped in our body and we have no way of releasing it. And so it could be anything, different guys have expressed different examples through the different things we've done. A real tangible example is, a bloke who's in the services having to go and pull a dead child out of a car. Like that's an extreme example. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but you can't sort of have an experience like that and not feel that it has some sort of traumatic energetic effect on us. So what happens to us men is, because we have no way of dealing with the actual issue, it gets trapped and it gets stuck and it just layers in and in and in and in and in, and then we're carrying around bags of this trauma for which we have no real solution. And what that trauma actually does is then it causes things like anger, causes fear. Apologies for the dodgy writing. It causes anxiety, and it causes depression. Now you might say, well, that does, I've experienced some of those things, or no, I haven't, or whatever it might be. But I think what you can relate to is that the trauma that we do carry around has had that kind of impact on us. And for most guys, we've got no real way of actually releasing that. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is, here's a different color. Problem number 2 is this one. It's relating to purpose. And what it is, it's actually not feeling a sense of achievement and purpose and fulfillment from our work, from our life's work, our life's purpose. Are you doing work that is meaningful to you? And are you doing, stuff that you love to do? Or are you on this kind of rat wheel of doing all this shit to actually get money to pay for the things? And being in that situation where we whacked up a whole lot of outgoings, and so you need to keep the job or whatever it is, or the situation, in order to fill, to fill the balance sheet sort of thing. And that was me, big time. That was me. I had all the outward ticks. I was CEO of a business. I had a beautiful home with kids, not wife, the whole everything outwardly going on, but inwardly probably the most frustrated and disconnected I've ever been. And actually, that was at the same point when that young guy didn't come back to the work the next day. And you can see, for me, there was a real alignment of the planets, stacking up of the trauma stuff over here, and then a real alignment, misalignment with purpose for myself there, which really became, as I say, like alignment of the planets. And so what that actually results in that particular area is we start to get some like passive aggressive type behavior because we're unfulfilled and there's a deeper sort of lack of meaning there. We obviously lack clarity and direction. And well, I guess it's just, what I would term alignment was we get out of alignment. It's just that deep feeling within that what you're doing is not really the fullest use of yourself or your purpose. For me, that one sits under the surface like the bottom of an iceberg. For a lot of guys, actually, and we're just in this sort of doing of life, and we, for me, that was the one that was hurting the most actually. Even out of all the others, that was a real challenge for me personally. Just this, this irritated person that's not really feeling like their best work is being done, or there's some deeper calling within. That bit of a longing, that bit of a sense of wanting to do something else and not being able to really do it because you're stacked with all of these other problems. That's problem number 2. Problem number 3 here is an interesting one. Problem number 3 here is just that we're on the surface, right? And there's no real deeper connection. And you go, oh yeah, what does that mean? What is that actually? What are you talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is when you get there with your mates, what you can find is a lot of the time that you catch up with your mates, you hit the beers, you have surface conversations about the footy, and then this is what you see people are shocked, like, I didn't know there's something wrong with Davo, and all of a sudden he's bloody gone and committed suicide or something. Everyone goes, I didn't even know there was anything, but he seemed like he was all right, I knew he was struggling with a couple of things, but I didn't know it was that bad. Well, that's because of this. Because we don't have any real deeper, more meaningful conversations with the blokes around us. We just don't get below the surface. We're just kind of all talking about the footy and shit, like I don't mind a beer or a conversation about the footy, don't get me wrong. But it's just when that's all there is and there's no ability to deepen that conversation with the rest of the lads, then all of that stuff that we, I guess, need to share as men, not a talk fest, not like women do. It's actually different. It doesn't need to be a talk fest about, and we don't want to whinge. But we actually do need to have a common, I guess, awareness and understanding that, one, we're not the only people going through the situation. But two, there is guys having different experiences, and you can learn from the other guys around you based on what they've experienced, and so I guess the real danger with this one, or the result or issue associated with that, is a feeling of social isolation. Just like, you haven't got a great lot of friends, or you're not really getting a deeper connection with those guys. What else have we got here? A sense of kind of purposelessness, like feeling like you've got to solve everything yourself. We're having surface conversations. And what we're doing actually is physically we're starting to run this whole circle here. We've got the trauma happening, we're lacking the purpose, and we're actually not getting any of the deeper connection. So we're actually running our bodies in like an adrenal fatigue, like like in a constant state of stress or frustration or anxiety. Like there's a lot going on, and it's up sometimes and it's down other times. But what that has is a physical problem for us, for our inner self. So those are the 3 problems. Now I ask you now, which one of those or all of those can you relate to? The trauma one, I think we don't necessarily really look at much, but now that I express that, you'll go, yeah, well, I've had, a series of life incidences, whether it's arguments or, conflicts or, blokes I've had a blue with or whatever it might be, that trauma sits there and we don't work it through our body? Or is it, I'm really lacking purpose and direction with my work? For me, that was a big one. Or am I really getting beyond the surface with any of the conversations? And maybe you are. So that's good if you can get you have got one or two or a group of mates that you can get deeper than the surface. Well, what that all go. So we got these. This is I'm sure you can relate to this. You'll be able to pick those, and you'll be able to. If you can't pick some of those, you'll be able to pick mates who you can go, yeah, I can see he's really lacking direction with his work at the moment. It's causing him issues. Or our mate's gone through a divorce, and he's just carrying around bags of trauma, and you can see it in him, but you don't know what to do about it. And then you sit there and you have a conversation. Everyone goes out for a beer and you have a chat, and nothing really gets said about it. Or you have a beer and he just sort of gets a bit loose and blows it out, and a trauma not really addressed. So I just ask you whether or not you can relate to any one of those three areas. And if you can, please stay with me now, because the next part of this is really important, because this is where you're going to get to understand what to actually do about that. Sorry about the text messages coming in. I don't know how to turn that off. So, yeah, let's move on. Let's get into this next space. So what do we do about the trauma, right? The trauma is these life experiences and incidents which have occurred and stay trapped. And what we don't realize is energetically that those traumas stay trapped with us. And if you think that the reference point is, if you think back to that, you will associate the feeling you had with it. If you got a lot of feeling associated with that incident, then that trauma is still stuck. So there's three things we need to do. We need to be able to, hang on, I need to go back here for a sec and get this one. There's that one. We need to go and we need to release the trauma. And releasing the trauma is actually a lot easier than what you think. It's working the trauma through our body, so that energy is not meant to stay stuck within our body. It just gets stuck, and there's many ways to do that. So we need to release trauma. We need to heal ourselves. And we need a roadmap for that. We need to understand how to heal and what it means to heal and how to release that. Now, there are several ways to do this, and I don't mean long talking events. I mean practical physical tools that you can use to actually heal yourself. And we need to find strategies to deal with anxiety, to deal with stress, to deal with anger, to deal with fear, and all those things that actually make sense, that work, and that are useful for men. And I keep saying that aren't long talk type arrangements where we have to, practical things that everyone can use, men can use, when they find yourself in the depths of this trauma, feeling anger, fear, anxiety, depression, whatever it might be. So those three things, and I'm going to come to in a minute, moreover, what we can do about those, but those are the three things we need to do to deal with the trauma. Let's just quickly move over to purpose. So in purpose, what we need to do is understand what's like a thing called intuition. It's our inner self. It's our inner gut feeling. Just call it your gut if you want to make it something a bit more simple. And we need to understand and realize that we actually do need to do what we love. Not it's not too bad. I don't mind aspects of what I do. I mean, actually, what is it the fullest, most important reason for you being here? And maybe there is a component of your work that is that, but maybe it needs to be a bit more. Well, maybe it's actually not. Maybe it's actually you're just on the rat wheel and doing stuff, and you're not really feeling. God, I wish I knew how to fix that. You're not really feeling that sense of full, deep connection with your purpose. One of the massive issues I see at the moment is just blokes not understanding the difference between the masculine and feminine self, and how to actually understand and form a balance between the masculine and feminine, between you and your partner. Um, Massive area of learning for me to really understand that masculine versus feminine kind of dynamic there. And then lastly is the stages of manhood, of growth. And this is, I think a lot of blokes find, I've noticed a real catalyst of when blokes can see that they've got trauma or issues, or they're not feeling the best themselves, and they've got sons or daughters, and they can feel themselves, getting angry, or whatever it might be, and almost like passing on that issue to the next generation. For me, that's what gets a lot of men. It's a real catalyst to go, no, stuff that. I can't have that happen. I can't have this passed on to the next stage. And that encourages men to then go, okay, well, I need to work on this myself. And if that's what it takes, then that's a good thing. All right, so can you relate to that? Can you relate to, the dynamic not being great with the missus, or feeling like you're passing on some of these challenges to the young bloke, or to your daughter, or actually feeling that sense of not really doing what it is you love to do? And so let's come down into this blue area. This is an interesting area. So why do we stay on the surface and not really deeply connect with the people around us? Well, there's this interesting kind of dynamic going on here, right? Physically speaking, these days, there's actually no real fear. We're not going to get eaten. We're not going to get killed by the next tribe or whatever. There's food down the road at Woolies. There's like, even things like COVID and that sort of thing have been somewhat of a threat, but generally we're very safe. There's not an ever constant threat of death or whatever, like there has been throughout history in different stages, where there's the real chance of actually dying or being killed, or, a war or whatever going on, or famine or disease or whatever over the course of history. So we're safe, actually, right now, probably safest we've ever been in history. But what we've still got is we've got this this fear mechanism, right? So our conscious mind is designed to actually pick up fears and issues and so forth, and there's no real ones to pick up. So what it does is it picks up the perceived ones, and you've seen that during COVID. You've seen panic stations with, panic buying for bloody toilet paper and all that sort of stuff, because we'd have this perceived fear that everything's going to be a problem. Now, I don't want to get into a debate about COVID. I just mean, what are the real fears versus the actual perceived fears? And that's the issue here. The real fear versus perceived fear. You go, okay, well, there's bugger all real fear, really. And then we go and we start flicking through Facebook, and all of a sudden there's this fear and anxiety, and there's we watch the news, and oh shit, this is a problem, that's a problem, there's a war there, and we actually have all this perceived fear, no real stuff, but there's all this perceived fear, and then we've got to try and go, well, we get all of this physiological response to that, and again, that's what causes this adrenal fatigue thing over here. All this fear is creating this kind of cortisol type response, and we're kind of panicked and we're stressed, and then we've got to also keep, what if we lose our job, and there's this constant kind of perceived fear as disassociated to a real fear. There's no real fear, but there's many more perceived kind of fear impulses in our coming into our minds than probably there's ever been before in history. So there's bugger all real fear, but there's bucket loads of perceived fear, and so again that causes this physiological response. We're in this constant state of stress and fight, flight, etc. I wonder if you can relate to that somewhere in your life. The other thing is that as men we wear masks, and so moving on to this next stage, and that sorry, one sec, that it's not okay to be vulnerable. It's not seen as okay yet to be vulnerable. And so, but to talk about what's going on, or to let the other guys in your circle know what's going on, there's this real sort of mask that doesn't allow us to be vulnerable. And what that means is I guess what we have to do then is understand and get real, I guess, and be able to be vulnerable to allow that mask to come off, for then courage to be able to, courage only exists alongside vulnerability. So we're seeing this sort of tough exterior as being the way to do things, but actually the true courage comes along with being vulnerable about how you really feel. So, I mean, if you can understand what I'm saying there in terms of the conversations that are going on around you happening at a surface level, we've each got to then take off our mask, allow ourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable about what's going on, and that sense of courage there that permeates through everything. And so what we got to do again here to get to a deeper level is be able to have real conversations, and to have real conversations, we have to be able to be vulnerable, and that's just to be able to talk on a slightly more deeper level. Now, I know we've talked a lot here about problems and issues and so forth, but if you followed along this far, you'll be able to resonate with just about every aspect of this. I'll almost guarantee it. And if you can't, you maybe say, or one but not the others, or whatever. If you can't, I guarantee there's someone around you that you can see has had these challenges, but we lack the skills to help these guys. So what if there was a different way? Let's take a deep breath for a second. You've seen this. You understand that yes, those things are out there, and it's now on a deeper level in your mind. You've actually been able to say, yes, I see what you're talking about. I can recognize these things. I can recognize them in myself, and I can probably recognize them in other guys. Okay, what do we do? And we've talked about those things around outside of the circle here. We've talked about releasing trauma and doing what you love and learning the masculine versus feminine, having real conversation. We've talked about those things. But what would that mean? What's the opportunity that's really associated with us working through it? Yeah, that's great, Jared. I've got some trauma. I could release it. Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Or, yeah, I'd love to do a bit more of of the work I'd like to do. But the practical realities are too hard. Like, I need to keep working. And yeah, it'd be nice to have real conversations, but I'm so time poor. There's just no time for that. Yeah, okay. Well, what are we doing at the moment to kind of deal with all those? Well, it's generally one. It's generally one of these few, right? We're either drinking, it could be drugs. It could, for me, often in times it's been over exercising. That was my one method that I thought was working, and it does help. It does help a lot. But I was exercising to the point of sickness and fatigue. Can be overindulging in food. Can be sex. Can be any number of compulsive type behaviors. Right? So okay, well, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I can relate to that again. All right. So next steps, right? The opportunity side of this. So what's available to us if we can transition this thing, if we can actually do what we love, start to master this masculine versus feminine thing, start to appreciate the stages of manhood, be a circuit breaker for these issues, and actually start to pass on from a deeper place, a more authentic man. So what could we do here out in this area? In this purpose area, we can become a much more purposeful and authentic man. And that can be passed on to the next generation. And if you don't do this for you, do it for your sons, do it for your daughters. If you can't see, well, yeah, I'd like to do what I'm like, but you got all these limitations and things that says you can't do that. And you're happy to deal with the inner problem yourself, and it's not that bad, it's all okay. Well, What about the next generation? Can you become a purposeful, balanced, authentic, more connected man in order for the next generation to receive that kind of example? And for us, I think that's the purpose of our generation, to be the circuit breakers. Our parents and families before us have been through enormous amounts of trauma. We go over here in the orange section, and I think that's one of the main reasons why sometimes our fostering from above hasn't always been the greatest. Our dads were in we're having some difficult challenges, Um, so I think it's our role to be the circuit breaker for the next generation. Um, all right. So what about over here in the trauma? Yeah, it'd be nice to release some trauma, but I'm not going through that. I'm not going through a talk fest, or I'm not going to go to whatever else. But what if instead of having this constant state of anger, fear, anxiety, depression, whatever it might be, what if you could actually like really express from love, and you could actually deeply um, connect and communicate with your family and those around you. If I asked you guys, we did a little Facebook survey recently on what's the things that are most important to you, and it generally comes down to some form of relationships, whether it's your partner, your kids, if you look to the end of your life, it won't be the amount of money you made, it'll be the amount of impact you've made, the amount of connection, the amount of how you were seen and perceived as how you were received, probably more so as a human. What if you could actually get to a point where you could express from love and you could actually free yourself from this trauma? And it wasn't that hard. You didn't have to go around with the anger, the stress, and carrying on like a cranky bastard. And it wasn't that hard to do. And you could heal all of that shit that sits in under the surface and just let it go. And every time a new one comes in, a new traumatic experience just goes whoosh, straight through and doesn't get stuck in there. How would that be, do you think, if you were able to express from love and actually release that and never have to have really worry about it too much ever again? How would that be? What about here, the deeper conversations? What about if you were able to actually oops. What about if you're actually able to really find your voice? And actually be able to express from that sort of deeper place and be connected with the humans around you. And maybe you go, look, I'm going pretty good. I'm going all right here. I don't have a lot of issues. Well, what about all the blokes around you who actually need you to be there to hold that space to be able to allow them to connect? We often talk to guys about the different things we do. They say, no, I'm feeling pretty good. Well, what about all the other guys who need the guys who are feeling pretty good to be there for them to listen to? Not a whinge fest, but if you're a pretty heart-centered man and you're going okay, well, can you find some space to help some other men to get to that point? Because there's a lot of guys out there that could use that. And what I find, though, is that 99 times out of 100, there's an element of this in all of us. And throughout our life, it goes up and it goes down. Sometimes it's not great, and sometimes it's actually quite bearable, and sometimes it's actually terrible. And at those times, we need the guys that are feeling all right to be there, because this is going to go on through our life. We're going to have ups and downs. When we're down and the other guys are up, we need them to be there, and we need to switch that around. And we need to be able to find our voice and then have those deeply more connected conversations, which allows us to be able to be more connected to the people around us. And that's ultimately what we're here to do, is to connect, to be comfortable with yourself, to be connected with your partner, and obviously your family, your friends, all that sort of thing. Because the ultimate, I guess, biggest adventure, biggest challenge, biggest expression of ourselves is to live the life of our dreams and live that fullest life. And we all know that, but we just don't get checked out of it, out of the day-to-day reality long enough often to look at it. And we just keep drinking, and we do this stuff in the middle here, just keep doing that and keep going on the rat wheel, and stuff happens, and whatever. But what if we actually couldn't live the life of our dreams? What actually if we could do what we love? If we did release the trauma and just could express from love, could have deeper, more connected conversations, all of that. I know when I ask you that question, I know that within you, you're going, okay, yeah, that'd be fucking great. But how, Jared? And you know, how could I do this? This all sounds nice, you know. Good stuff. Yeah, but I've got a life to live. You know, I've got shit to do. Okay, I understand that. Well, here's the next steps, right? We offer two things. Two, very simple, two things. We offer a thing called Men Stuff, which is a short just meeting of men that generally occurs on a Sunday morning. I mean, that's subject to change in the future, but it's just a short experience of a little bit of adventure. So we might do some, you know, outdoor rock climbing, or we might do some boxing or surfing or different things like that. Get out in nature, and what that does is that helps us ground, and it helps us get into and it starts a real conversation. So what we've got here is we've got men's stuff, you know. I guess we're trying to think of a good name, but that's what we come up with. We got men's stuff, and that's just a small opportunity for you to see some of this stuff over here, see some of the trauma, start to realize and understand, okay, over here, what's going on, and maybe identify that, oh, okay, well, can I steer myself a bit more towards what I love? And really to have that deeper conversation here, that start that real conversation, so you know that there's a place to be able to do that. So that's men's stuff. The second thing we do is men's retreats. This is at this stage a 3-day retreat. It happens on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. It's a mix of adventure. It's a mix of real conversations. We'll learn some actual, tangible, specific strategies around dealing with your stress, dealing with your anger. We'll sit down and we'll go into the fundamentals of the masculine versus feminine and how to really get that deeper connection with your wife or partner. We'll understand some of the stages of manhood. I guess what I'm saying to you is the retreat actually contains this, and this. You can get to, as I say, release the trauma so you can understand how to express from love. Understand and get more connected to your deeper purpose so you can feel a much more authentic, purposeful man. And you can understand and get into the group of men, a safe space to be able to deepen that quality of conversation and get below the surface and realize that's what all the other guys would like as well. And really, start that conversation. And then what we provide on the back of the retreat is some catch ups so that you can come back to the things that you've learned in terms of releasing trauma, the actual strategies, and you can come back to the conversation with the other men so you can stay at that deeper level. So if you've come back to the start, if you've experienced any of these issues or challenges in your life, and you're saying to yourself, maybe it's time I did something about this, or the pain's rising to such a point where you're going, this is not friggin' fun. I do not like what's going on. And maybe it's gotten to that level where it's actually really impacting. Maybe you've gone through some substantial trauma. Maybe it's relationship issues or job issues or financial issues or whatever it might be. And the pain gets really stacked, and we go, okay, well, the pain's stacked so high now that we actually need to do something. Does it need to get that high? Can we not just actually put some time? I love that saying. If you don't make any time for if you don't make any time for wellness, you'll need to make time for illness. And that's the situation here. We're just kind of making time for the problem in our day-to-day life. Well, how about we make some time for the wellness, for the solution, for us to be more connected? How about we create a circuit breaker, a line in the sand, so that we're not passing all this shit on to the next generation, so that our boys can have, authentic, connected, loving fathers. This is a men's retreat, and it's for men. It's to address these specific issues with men. It's not that we're trying to exclude anyone. It's really just that the tools are designed for men, that we don't pass this shit on to the next generation. You know, it's in the scheme of things, this is a piddly investment to get along to a retreat, but we let all the excuses and all the bullshit, to be honest, stop us from doing that. And what you'll notice, if you've actually come this far on this video, numerous times, you know, things will have come up inside you, and you go, I just want to turn this off. You know, This is uncomfortable for me. You know, I wonder how many people actually make it to this part of the conversation here, where you actually think, well, you know, maybe I could do something about this. Maybe it is time. Well, maybe it is time. Maybe it is time that you did do something about this. You know, at 21st Century Warrior, you can see that we're extraordinarily passionate about helping people. There are 3 key people that help to facilitate all of these events. We've got Geraldine Zadkiel, who's our kinesiologist, who's the energy worker who really specialises in this trauma area over here. Amazingly talented and skilled in those simple but very effective techniques to release the trauma. You got myself over here, a coach, an NLP practitioner, trained in energy systems like Geraldine is, but having lived and spent probably the last 10 or so years really understanding by trial and error what it takes to learn these things here, and not professing to be an expert, but actually being able to share some real knowledge on this, in relation to doing what you love, in relation to the masculine feminine dynamic and your stages of growth as a man. You've got Ben Grover, who just has this superpower for creating a safe space for men to be able to have that deeper conversation that's not just on the surface. You know, so that we can actually get that real conversation started and see what it's like, and then move forward. So if all of this, what it actually is all about is actually for us as men drawing a line through the middle here, a real north point for us. An actual, here's finally a pathway for me to go. And if you've stayed this long through this video and this is resonating with you, well, it's probably time that you stepped into this, because you're hearing it for a reason. You know, got in contact with us, booked for a retreat, come along to a men's stuff, just talk to one of the 3 of us. And again, if you've seen this, you'll be able to know the ways to be able to do that. But finally, enlighten, get ourselves to a point where we're comfortable and authentic with ourselves, and the boys, the girls that are the next generation get to learn from heart-centered men. You know, so that's really it. That's what we do. I trust that's been really useful in terms of understanding what's going on, and also useful from a point of view of what to do about it. So if this is, as I say, the clear call to action is come along, come to a retreat, get in contact with us, do a men's stuff. Geraldine also offers one-on-one sessions if you're in you need some help now. But yeah, look, that's now is the time. Now is the time to make some change. That's it for me. Thanks so much for taking the time to hang out and come along on this journey with me. You can see that we're very passionate about this, and we'd love to help you get along on that journey of enlightenment and fulfillment. Take care. I'll see you.